talk a little bit about the American response to all of this and what has to be done to, well, hopefully assure the survival of our economy and more generally our republic. I'm very pleased to have the chairman of the Committee on the Present Danger China, Brian Kennedy, with us. Brian is the past and very distinguished president of the Claremont Institute in California. He is these days the president and founder of the American Strategy Group. He writes brilliantly on these and many other subjects in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere, and has been a terrific leader of our efforts to try to acquaint the American people with the present and growing danger from China, and to give them specific, concrete ideas about what we might do to try to protect ourselves and our beloved country against this threat. Brian Kennedy, welcome. It's so good to have you with us.
Thank you, Frank. Great to be with you. And let me thank the team at the Center for Security Policy for organizing all this. It's very much appreciated. And thank you to Sean and Rosemary and Gordon for three, I thought, brilliant presentations about what is going on today. When Frank and I were talking about this, we were trying to strike a balance between alerting people to just how serious this coronavirus is and what our political and economic response should be to it, but also to look at this in a more positive light, because we Americans can figure anything out if we're asked to. The American people are some of the most hardworking and innovative people in the whole world. And when presented with a crisis like this, we can adjust and do the right thing, and in Rosemary's case, produce more medicines. In Gordon's case, look at the economic impacts and understand what is being done to the United States and what our response should be. And in Sean's case, simply to understand that this is the Chinese Communist Party doing what they do, which is to lie to their own people and to lie to the world. All that having been said, when we look around the country today, we've been engaged in this whole process of what's called flattening the curve, meaning shutting down the US economy so that the virus does not spread far and wide among our population and then overwhelm our healthcare system. Now, that seems perfectly sensible. And I would recommend, by the way, our colleague Steve Bannon has something called War Room Pandemic. It's on his website, War Room Pandemic, but also a podcast, and he's on radio around the country describing just how serious all this is. But one of the constant themes that Steve has had is that we simply have to flatten the curve so that large numbers of Americans don't get this. Now, the president has adopted that strategy. We're in the what's called containment mode. And that, I think, will buy us time so that the virus doesn't spread and overwhelm our healthcare system. My concern today is that we don't go too far with that. That I think we have substantially flattened the curve and educated Americans about what they ought to do, better hygiene, social distancing, engaging in common sense measures so that the virus doesn't spread. Early on, some people said, well, look, we don't want to shut things down because, we don't want to hurt the economy. Well, I and others said at the time, the economy exists for the good of the American people, not the other way around. The economy exists because the American people do things, but it exists for their benefit. Okay, fine. So we close down parts of the economy in order to stop the spread of the virus. But we need to be very careful now that we don't keep it closed for too long, because the American people will eventually need their economy back. We have millions of people who are going to be unemployed potentially if this goes on too long. And so we don't want 15 days to become 30 days, to become 60 days or 90 days. There's some talk in the media of shutting down the US economy for 120 days. Well, that would be a disaster. And that would be the kind of economic attack, economic, I think, self-destruction the Chinese Communist Party would want for the United States. That we would shut down our economy that long will have disastrous economic and political ramifications for the country. Now, the good news is we don't need to shut it down for that long. We just simply need to engage in the kind of common sense, social distancing, and better hygiene, more aggressive hygiene than we have in the past. As we do this, we're going to be approaching summer. It's going to warm up. It will naturally slow down the spread of the virus. Over time, the United States right now is developing better therapeutic drugs to deal with the virus so that when you do catch it, it doesn't become as severe. Over time, we'll develop a vaccine, but that could take another year and a half. But ultimately, the American people, or not ultimately, but here just in the short run, the American people are going to need their economy back. They're going to need to get working again. They're going to need to be going to their places of worship. They're going to need to get back into an economy that they have built and which has been brilliant for the past 3 years. And so my great takeaway from all this is let's take it seriously, but let's also remember that we can adapt and innovate, and we can produce the medicines, we can produce the respirators, we can do all this in such a way that we can live through this crisis, and we should not let anything stop us from being the free and prosperous people that we are. Be smart, don't let the virus spread, be very careful, but also let's be aggressive with our adaptation to this new reality, and let's get Americans back to work as soon as is reasonably possible. I'm not saying tomorrow, but we should have the default view that Americans need to get back to work for their sake and for the sake of the country. So I would say, Frank, that's the message I would like to offer, and I would encourage everyone to look at the committee's website, presentdangerchina.org, and learn more about the kind of work that the committee has done.